I got into, I'm not sure, well, first I'll start, I know, or maybe you don't know, how many of you use the Mount Otai repeater that you guys operate? Quite a bit. How many are any of you doing the digital? I know Ed and... Okay. So, some time ago, Yaesu came out with the digital repeater. I was lucky enough to get one way back when it was $500 for a repeater, so it was a really cheap repeater. So, and I have a repeater on Mount Wilson, which is where I have this website up. There's the antennas on the towers. I work for Channel 7, so I have a free spot on a tower. that was a nice part of the deal. So the repeater's been up there since the 70s, and I kind of acquired it because the guy who operated the transmitter left, retired, and things started slowing down. As many of you know, when the internet came, whatever repeaters, at least ours, got pretty quiet. So when the digital came out, I was somewhat into D-Star, and I thought maybe I'll just put a D-Star repeater. But then it became, well, then I have to tell people that operate the repeater, go out and buy D-Star radios and sell their other ones. But when Yaesu came out with this one that did FM or digital, I thought, well, that's a nice mix because you can still do both. So that was my intro to getting into the digital side. So I got the radio, the FT1, talked on it, whatever, and decided to get my repeater. And then there was a group that was starting. Now we didn't make a club up, but pretty much, and we still don't have a club, but we call it the Southern California Link Network because we have a bunch of repeaters that are tied together, and yours is one of them. And I have a listing over here. Let me see if I can put my finger in the way. Right here is a little listing of all the repeaters that are usually all tied together. And we added this one guy in Hawaii because he's a nice guy, and people surf here and over there, so what the heck. And right now everything seems to be working great. We tie together, some other people tie in and connect to the system with nodes, which is a setup of using a Yaesu radio and an internet interface. And they come in, they'll say hi or whatever and talk, but most of the time we have just the repeaters set together and we all chat with each other. Now Yaesu just recently came out with another system of tying repeaters together, which don't rely on the Yaesu servers, because right now when we talk to each other in Link, you have to use a Yaesu server, you use their server to be able to connect together. So they decided to try to get away from that so people could just use like independent linking from one repeater right to another repeater. And they call, I forget what the initials mean, IMRS is their meaning. Oh, okay. So what I did was I went and got one of the repeaters. I have it, I have it right here. I brought it here for you to look at. And it operates differently than the other repeater. It allows you to connect the internet to it, and then you can put in here IP addresses of other repeaters, and you connect back and forth between the two. Typically, right now, they use what's called Wires X, if any of you are familiar with that, and you can link repeaters together into a room, which is a common, like a party line room where all the repeaters would tie together, and that's how they link. So Ed went and got himself the new DR2 Yaesu repeater, and he and another group of people were experimenting with it, and I got one finally. And Tommy, the guy in Hawaii, already had one, so I'm getting information from them on how to hook mine up. And Ray, sorry. And so they pretty much started all the stuff. I'm just putting the stuff together so I could figure out how does this work and try to make a presentation to show people how to use it. So what the presentation is, hopefully it'll come up here, is how do you make your radios talk to the repeater, and what do you have to do to your radio to connect to another repeater that's in your group. So presently on that previous web page I showed you, we have 5 repeaters that always link together. With the new system, by using your radio, you can say, okay, I only want to talk to the guy that's in San Diego or in Hawaii, and I don't want to tie up all the repeaters. Okay, so here I have an example of 3 of the new repeaters, and there's going to be 5 groups, or they're called digital groups. So, made it simple. I have a North, Central, and Southern California repeater group. Call it repeater 1, 2, and 3, and there's a pair of handhelds for each one of the repeaters. Now, I won't go into it too much on how you set up the repeater because they're pretty new, but on each repeater, you have to give it a designated number. So you have to plan this out ahead. So like when Ed was doing all this, he said, okay, I'm gonna be repeater 1, he's gonna get repeater 2, I'll be repeater 5. You can't have duplicate repeater numbers because that messes up everything. So here, we go in the menu of this repeater on the front panel, and you can see we gave it 1, 2, and 3. So we have the 3 repeaters. I'm waiting for this. And since your repeater number is going to be 1, 2, or 3, in your handheld radio, there's a location that you can put in the ID number of your repeater. So, for instance, on the OTI repeater, that's repeater number 1. So if you're in this area and you strictly want to use a repeater, think of it like a PL tone. You're going to put 01 in your radio. And when you key it up, the repeater's going to say, hey, I'm 01. I'll turn on the transmitter. You guys hear me. And if for Central California, he has the number 2. Those guys, they would put 02 in theirs, and so on. Now, the difference between the new repeaters is besides having your designated number, like number 1, 2, or 3, you can also put in another number in all of the repeaters, or a couple of repeaters. So like I said, if you think of it as a PL tone, typically a repeater has 1 PL tone, and that's it. You key it up on that tone and it works. On the new ones, you have the tone that's designated as the default, which is 1, 2, or 3, and then you can make a linking or group ID number, which is like a PL number. So let's say for number 50, I'm going to put 50 in all the repeaters besides 1, 2, or 3. And if I turn my radio to 50, and I key up on the repeater here in San Diego, it looks over the internet and says, well, the repeater in Northern California, Central California, they have 50 also in there. I'm going to turn them on. So now all the repeaters are turned on.
I have a question on that comment.
Okay.
Does that mean that those repeaters that you just turned on are quiet or in use some other way?
Well, they could be. So let's say you have, we'll say 6 repeaters up and down California in your group. Meaning you have a bunch of friends that own repeaters, and you say, hey, I want to be able to talk to any one of the 6, okay, like your club. So each repeater has a number 1 through 6. Okay, the one in the south has 1, the next one up is 2, 3, 4. So let's say, for instance, you decide, okay, I'm going to have a group, I'm going to build a group between here and Los Angeles. Repeater number 2 is in Los Angeles. So besides having the number 1 or 2 in your repeater, you say, I'm going to pick number 25. So you put 25 in the repeater at OTI, the guy in Los Angeles puts 25 in his repeater, but nobody else puts 25 in the other 4. Okay? Because you can add all these numbers, you can keep adding groups. So now the guy in San Diego says, okay, I also want to be able to talk to the guy in Central California, which is repeater number 3. I'm going to call that 26. So you put 26 in your repeater, the guy in Central California puts his on, adds 26 to his, but the other guys don't add 26 to their repeater. So if you go to 25 and you turn on the repeater in Los Angeles. If you go to 26, this repeater and the one in Central California gets turned on. So you're making groups up. If you decide I want all the repeaters on, then all of you pick a number and say like 99 is going to be everybody. And you're programming this into the input of this repeater before you put it on the mountain. Yes, sir.
Not understanding how you turn on an LA repeater with a handheld.
In the handheld, there's a we'll call like a PL tone, like I said.
Right.
There's a thing called digital group ID, if you want to call it a PL tone, and you go in there and you put that number in it. So if I want to talk to the guy in Central California and tie the 2 repeaters together, and let's say we decided it was going to be number 26, I go in the handheld, I go to number 26, and I'm still on the repeater frequency here at OTI. And when I key it down, right? Huh?
You're going through OTI.
Yeah, I'm going to go through OTI for all of this. So I key up OTI, and OTI says, well, the other repeater that has number 26 is the one in Central California. So over the internet, it connects to that repeater, and because it has a 26, it turns on. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So is it the DG, the repeater ID and the group ID, or just the group ID? Because you said you guys, there's no duplication of the DG ID in the group. but let's say, you know, Manny, Mo, and Jack buy repeaters and they put them up and they happen to use group 26. And they have different numbers that, is the repeater to respond to 26 your group like 26 their group? Or does it require both the repeater ID to be correct and the group ID to be correct?
Okay, so the repeater's ID is that number like 1, 2, 3. And Yaesu, I believe, said they're going to use low numbers for that. So they assign, like, if you're going to, if you have 10 repeaters you want to use in a group, use 1 through 10. And then when you decide the groups that you want to, repeaters you want to tie together, we'll say you start 49 or 50 as those numbers. Now, the numbers you use can be the same as a totally different ham club, because when you put the numbers in and the repeater using software to put the IP address of the repeater you're using. So you might have a group that says, okay, 26 is tying 4 repeaters in California together, and let's say there's a group in Texas and they use 26. Well, they're using a different IP number because they're talking to different repeaters. So those numbers, 1 through whatever, just whatever you want to call them, and it just identify.
So how long ago did the DR2 come out? How many are out there? What's that?
Date was when it was announced.
I think, Joe, you would know, right? What,
Yeah, the DO2 was introduced back in October, this past October, and they hit the streets around the beginning of November. The clubs were given those who owned DR1s were given the opportunity to have a trade-in, and they could get the. There you go. Thank you. They could trade their DR1X in for a DR2 with or without the IMRS. And if you traded your repeater in without the IMRS, don't quote me on the numbers, but I think it was like $300. Yeah. And if you got it with the IMRS, you traded it in and it was only $500. The beauty of it was that Yaesu, once you went into agreement to do this, Yaesu would send you the DR2 before picking up the DR1. This way, the only time you lost was the switchover. Yeah, the program, you spend time programming the repeater, and then you go up to the hill and you turn the repeater off, pull the old one out, put the new one in, and you're back on the air, which is really, really nice. And that's something that, as a club, we need to decide if that's what we want to do with OTI, but that's for a discussion for another day. But that's when it was introduced.
okay, so on the digital group ID numbers, remember I was talking about the repeaters? So the repeaters have, repeater 1, we call it number 1, 2, and 3, and this is something that you guys figure out when you get your repeater. You could be 7, 8, 9 if you want. Okay, so now also in your repeater, you say, I'm going to use digital group 41 for repeater 1 and 2, and for all the repeaters, we're going to call it 45. So in the repeater on the front panel, you put in these group numbers. That's part of how you program the repeater before you put it up on the hill. And here you can see we've got repeater where it says repeater group. In the repeater, you put in what repeaters are going to be involved in my repeater. And here, there's just 3, so you put 1, 2, and 3. So this is the setup of the repeater, like I said. Okay. There's a setup where you have to make your repeater a default. You can see the word DG ID right here has a blue background to it. That's important when you're setting up the repeater. Going on this one. And then there's software that goes to the USB port on the back of your repeater, so you can tell it the IP address. See, it'd be nice if Yaesu had everything where you could put a PC on here and just say, I want to make a change, but if you have certain things you want to change, you have to drive up to the hill and go to the front screen, so hopefully you get it all done the first time. So on here, for instance, I got Ed's repeater, NBL's repeater, and my repeater I'm going to leave blank because I'm not going to talk out away from my repeater to myself, so I'm repeater 3 is the one we're working on right now. So I have to put the IP address in there, and there's software that you do it by clicking on the button on the call sign, and that's part of the setup again. So this is mostly for setting it up. Now there's a timer that once you start talking on the repeater, you want to you want to set, like, how long do I want this repeater to be tied to the repeater, let's say in San Francisco? When I key up, is it going to be forever? Is it going to be 5 seconds? So there's a timer in the repeater that's, as long as you keep talking within the time, in this case we'll call it 30 seconds, my repeater is going to be linked to the other one. If I wait more than 30 seconds, if it's set for 30, then the repeater beeps back at you and says, we're done, and now your repeater's not linked to wherever you were going. So that's what this timer does that's in the repeater.
The IMRS timer?
Yes,
Yeah, 30 seconds.
this one's right, yeah, the one here in orange,
Yeah.
IMRS timer. There's also a timeout timer for people who talk too long.
He just left.
Okay, how to use it. Now this is the part where you're in your car or you're walking around. How do I use this repeater system now? The other stuff is for the guy who owns the repeater and has to put all that stuff in there. We've got the 3 repeaters and we've got a bunch of handhelds in different parts of California. So on handheld number 1 and 2, they go into their radio, like yours, he's gone. And they put in their DGID, which is a menu by holding down the GM button. They set their transmitter to TX01. It's like setting a PL. TX01. You don't have to go deep in menus, you just hold the button down and you're there. So now, it works like a normal repeater. The guy on handheld 1 keys up, the repeater comes on, the guy in handheld 2 hears them, they talk. Now on 3 and 4, they have a repeater, and their repeater's number 2. So just like your PL tone, you would have to set it up. So in this case, they set theirs for number 2. In 5 and 6, they set theirs for 3. And that's just the normal. We're using repeaters in 3 different parts of California. So as I wrote here, if handheld 1, he puts in 03 in his radio. And he keys it up. So now repeater 1 still repeats, but now because he has 03, it now goes over the network and it turns on repeater 3 and it's transmitting, and he's now talking to the guys on handheld 5 and 6. That kind of makes sense so far? So, like I said, think of it like a PL tone. You got a repeater now that has more than one PL tone, but it knows what to do if you select a different one. It knows where to go. So they key up. Remember that timer? So now that as soon as they keyed up, that 30-second timer started on both repeater number 1 and repeater number 3. And as soon as when the guy keyed up and then let go on handheld 1, the repeater came back with a transmission of a beep. It went beep. And the guy knows, oh, my timer started. I'm connected to somebody. And also the timer over here on the repeater number 3. So these guys are talking back and forth. Now there's a difference here once that timer starts, is that once that timer started, handheld number 2, he still has his radio on TX1 because he was just talking on the repeater. He didn't want to go anywhere. But as soon as that timer starts, repeater 1 and repeater 3, they don't care anymore what the TX number is on a handheld. They'll transmit and link back and forth as long as someone talks within 30 seconds, because that timer's set for 30 seconds. So if your friend is on handheld number 2 and he can hear you because you're going through the repeater, but he wants to talk also, he doesn't have to switch to 3 because the timer started already, because the guy on handheld 1 like initiated the link. And now anybody that's on repeater 1 talking can talk over to 3, and the guys on repeater 3 are talking back the other way around. So far. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody. Okay. Okay, so the guy now here on repeater 2 in Central California, he decides now that he wants to talk directly to repeater 1. So he puts his handheld on 01 or 41, because further back, 41 was a common number between repeater 1 and repeater 2. So he puts his on 01, and he keys it, but he can't talk directly to that repeater because repeater 1 is already talking to a different repeater. It's busy. So now that it's busy, the guy on repeater 2 hears 3 beeps. He goes beep, beep, beep. He says, oh, I'm not linking, I can't get to that guy. So it would be nice if Yaesu had something on the radio that can tell you like who's busy or where you're at, but right now you just hear 3 beeps and you just know you're not going where you want to go. So as I wrote down here, once the repeater link is made and the timers are running, other people can't get and connect to you, as far as in this mode, where it's repeater to repeater. Okay, I had to add a 4th repeater just to get this dual system working, so it's kind of an add-on. So I added this 4th repeater in handheld number 7. So remember, this guy here is talking to repeater, or these guys are talking, still linked to repeater 3, and talking to these two guys on the handheld. And he tried earlier, but he couldn't get in because things were busy, so he decides he wants to talk to the guy in Hawaii, repeater number 4. So he puts TX04 in his handheld, and when he keys it up, he gets to repeater 4, and now he's talking to Hawaii. Even though he could be talking to the guy in Northern California or Southern California, they're busy, so Hawaii is part of the group when they first started this whole repeater group thing, like everybody in Hawaii we have. So those two guys, and the guys in Northern California and Southern California, they're having one conversation. The guy in Central California and Hawaii are having their own conversation. So at this point, everyone starts talking, and when they first started, then all those timers started. So now there's 30 seconds of the repeaters being locked and linked together for at least 30 seconds. And the timer times out when there's 30 seconds worth of no transmissions. So you'd have to wait.
So it's on your own.
Yeah, so when you unkey and then you key back down again, when the other guy's done talking, you're still talking back and forth.
Restarts the timer.
Yeah, start over. Okay, so here, and I got rid of Hawaii because we're done with Hawaii. That's what they said in Korea.
Poor Tommy.
Poor Tommy.
Poor Tommy, he's out. Okay, so here we have the example where, okay, no one's talking now for 30 seconds. And repeater 1, 2, and 3. So all the repeaters now send out a double beep. Now a single beep said the timer started. The triple beep was I can't get to where I'm linking. It's I got 3 beeps. 2 beeps says the repeater is open for wherever you want to go again. The timeout timer is ended. So once your repeater is timed out and open, you can now say, I want to go somewhere else. You can change it. Because remember, before, once the timer's going, you're locked into wherever you're going. So now handheld 3 in the middle here, in Central California, he says he wants to talk to all the repeaters. Now earlier, all the repeaters, as you recall, they were programmed with this number 45. So they all have 45 in them. So in his handheld, he goes to that menu. Instead of 01 or 03 on their TX number, he puts in TX 45. Now when he keys it up now, he's on 45. His buddy is still on 02. These guys are talking to each other. So he started, and now all 3 repeaters are talking to each other. The timers start on all of them, and the repeater replies just once to say, your timer started. It doesn't beep every time. It's just the one time for the timer when it starts. So since the timer started, it doesn't matter again what anybody else's TX number is dialed in. They get to join the group and talk. Everybody talks across the board. You can change the number. Now we did find out that you can change the number, but it has to be one of the numbers that's in the repeater that was programmed. Remember we have 01, 02, 03, the 45. If you put like 13 in and there's 13 not programmed, you're not going to key up the repeater. The repeater won't key up. So you have to have a valid number that's in there, whether it's being used at the moment or not. But once somebody starts and ties all the repeaters together, you could just key up. So if you hear a conversation going, you can just start talking. You don't have to say, hey, what number are you on so I can join you. It just does it. Okay, then I went back to this scenario. 30 seconds gone by. All the repeaters are cleared of their timer. They get the double beeps, and then we're back to starting from scratch again. Now, one of the operators, I don't know if it was Joe or not, he went to get coffee. And when he came back, because the QSO was going on, he said, "I'm gonna get a cup of coffee. These guys talk forever." So he comes back, and he doesn't hear anything. So he keys down. Now his handheld's on 01. He keys down and goes, "Hey, where's everybody?" But now he's only going through repeater 1 because since the timers have timed out and he's on 01, he is strictly in his repeater only. If the timer was going, he would still be talking across the board to everybody. So, again,
It's coming out through SoCal Link out the repeater, but we're not hearing the repeater.
you're hearing it there though?
The reflector, 70, I think it's 70, into the SoCal. So you're sounding good to me here in Hawaii, and it's a beautiful evening here on the southern tip of the Big Island of Hawaii, where I enjoy an piece and some goodies. You eat, not the smoker in it, okay? Behave.
Okay, Tommy, thank you very much for the demonstration. Some of the guys were able to hear the OTI repeater better than my repeater, so. Thank you, in 73.
Yeah, so he was saying that he wasn't hearing you through this, he was hearing you through the Wires X link.
Right. Yeah, because this,
Yeah, you sound fine here. Sounded pretty fine. Don't break up. So that's open spots, Rob. All right, keep hotel 6 gang up. Aloha.
thank you, 73. Yeah, the IMRS, and that was the other thing, because, well, usually you don't move repeaters around. But we're going to try to do the demonstration through a phone on this, but you have to be able to pass. You pretty much have to know the IP address to pass, and it has to have one port number to pass, but cell phones don't seem to want to pass ports. Or I would have been able to do this, we could have talked to Hawaii from here through a phone. So anyway, this was the other, I'm just going to show another way of using the digital, the Yaesu system, or actually this device is used for D-Star or DMR, and you can connect to a lot of reflectors, and it's a handy box, and I believe ham radio outlets sell these.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and that was the other thing too, it'd be nice, like right now on Wires X, you can query Wires X and say what groups are available, and you pick one, and it automatically will connect. Right now with this, it's like saying, well, if I go to 25, where do I get? You know, or 26, is there a listing? Where do I find it? Or do I have to carry a piece of paper in my car? You know, so in a way, user-friendly wise, you have to remember a lot. Now, if you decide, I'm strictly going to use the repeater just to link to 5 other repeaters all the time, and I don't want to do this splitting up, then that makes it easy. You just put your PL code on that group number that everybody decides, and you're all tied together. So it could be complicated, or it could be really simple. Because if you think about how, if you manage it well enough, you could tell everybody, you know, get together with everyone in California and say, everyone's got a repeater, the newer repeater, let's give me all your numbers, we're going to put numbers on every repeater, and in Southern California, we're certainly going to make a group 25, and we're going to they'll hang on 25. But if we want to talk to one of your repeaters, we'll have a number to go to, and we can connect to you. But other than that, let's make available everybody's repeater. Well, you can really make it complicated, but you also have combinations, like 25 would be everybody here, 26 would be everybody here plus one repeater in San Francisco, 27 would be everybody here and one in San Jose. But what if I want just one repeater in Southern California? I mean, you have to have a whole bunch of groups and combinations, and so you can make it complicated.
If you use the simple method and open them all up, it's like D-Star, you get somebody that says, hey, why are you always talking on this when you're talking to somebody next door?
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing too. It's like, that's why on the SoCal Link system, we try to make it where we're not going to try to bring the whole world in and just have hundreds of repeaters on. We just want just Southern California area and Hawaii. And just, if you're driving around Southern California and you want to link, you know, you drive up north to LA or something, at least you can still kind of stay contact this way, or like me, I can drive down here and talk up north, but I don't want to be tied every day to Texas or, you know, Illinois. That, you know, they're talking about traffic and I don't know what streets they're talking about, so that's it on that.